I'm pleased to welcome you to this special campus program with Mohammad Darawshe. Has devoted much of his personal and professional life to building a model of respectful and sustainable shared society. The events of October 7th and the Israel-Hamas War have had a unique impact on Jewish and Arab-Palestinian communities across Israel and have posed significant challenges for intergroup relations. Mohammad Darawshe and Professor Sagiv will discuss these challenges, as well as his vision for a way forward at this precarious juncture. This is an important example of the ways the Helen Diller Institute works to provide a rich academic forum for our students and our faculty and community members to explore the breadth and complexity of Israel and contemporary Jewish issues. At a time when polarization is more severe than ever, the Institute works to foster dynamic spaces where Berkeley students can engage meaningfully and constructively on the big issues of the day in all their complexity, no matter how challenging or contested. In these past weeks, we have hosted some wonderful programs with authors Ayelet Gunder-Goshen and Ayelet Sabari, anthropologist Karen Friedman-Peleg, and later this month we'll also hold a webinar with journalist Nadav Eyal, and we'll host historian Ilan Troen in person. You'll find more information about these talks in our flyers and on our website, and also recordings of those events that have passed. We have launched UC Berkeley's Israel Studies minor, building on the dozens of courses we offer every year, and we engage a cohort of 30 undergraduate fellows in leadership training and in program planning for their peers, including how to have difficult conversations and how to engage across differences, which I think today's program is also an amazing example. All of our programs, activities, and events are dependent on philanthropic support from the community, including from many of you in this room, and for that we are very grateful. Now I'm really honored to introduce our speakers. Masua Sagiv is the Koret Visiting Assistant Professor of Jewish and Israel Studies at the Helen Diller Institute at UC Berkeley. She's the senior faculty member of the Shalom Hartman Institute in the San Francisco Bay Area. Her scholarly work focuses on the development of contemporary Judaism in Israel as a culture, religion, nationality, and as part of Israel's identity as a Jewish and democratic state. Her research explores the role of law, state actors, and civil society organizations in promoting social change across diverse issues, including shared society, religion and gender, religion and state, and Jewish peoplehood. Prior to arriving in the Bay Area, Masua Sagiv was the academic director of the Menomadin Center for Jewish and Democratic Law at Bar-Ilan University. She earned her doctorate in law from Tel Aviv University, where she wrote her dissertation on the topic of law and social change in the halakhic feminist struggle in Israel. Here at UC Berkeley, she teaches gender, religion, and law, the case of Israel, and comparative constitutional law, the case of Israel. Now I'm very pleased to welcome our speaker, and I'll try again, Mohammad Darawshe. Is that closer?
Even better than our way I
Okay, I'm going to keep working on it. He is Director of Strategy at the Center for Shared Society at Givat, Haviva. He holds a master's degree in Peace and Conflict Management from Haifa University, and is a Robert Bosch Academy Fellow and faculty member of the Shalom Hartman Institute. He previously worked as co-director of the Abraham Initiatives and as an elections campaign manager at the Democratic Arab Party and United Arab List, and he was a leadership fellow at the New Israel Fund. Darawshe is a member of the executive board of Darkenu, Pnima, and the Aaron Economic Center. He was previously elected council member of his hometown, Ixal. He has presented lectures at the European Parliament, the NATO Defense College, the World Economic Forum, Club de Madrid, the US Congress, and Israel's Presidential Conference. He is a recipient of the Peacemakers Award from the Catholic Theological Union and the Peace and Security Award of the World Association of NGOs. Just a little more, there's a lot here. He's also a member of the National Committee on Coexistence Education Policy, the three-sector roundtable at the Prime Minister's Office, and the Strategic Planning Authority for Economic Development of the Arab sector. So please join us in welcoming Mohammad Darawshe and Masua Sagiv for their program.
Hi everyone, welcome to this morning.
think above everything that you've heard about Muhammad, he's also...
We can't hear you.
You can't hear me. Okay.
I don't know.
How about now?
Yes.
Thank you. So, should I hold it?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
So, in addition to everything that you've heard about Muhammad, he's also such an amazing human being. And this is such a privilege. It's not our first conversation, and I'm sure it's not going to be our last conversation. It's such a privilege to have this conversation today, especially in this place. And I want to start this conversation with a personal. Muhammad, you've worked in the field of shared society for decades. In fact, for those who don't know, Muhammad coined the term shared society in Israel and in the world. And in the past year, you have also experienced grave loss with your cousin Awad, who was murdered on October 7th. Can you reflect on your last year? How has the last year been for you from both of these avenues?
First of all, Masua, it's a great honor and pleasure to be with you again. I'm definitely looking for our continuous discussions, not just public, but also the ones that we do to try to figure out solutions to our complicated reality in different forums that we are part of. I'm very proud of partnering with you on many of those activities. It's been a very bad year. Yes, I did experience the loss of my cousin Awad, paramedic at the Supernova party, who refused to leave the scene and refused to evacuate, stayed to treat the wounded until he was killed himself. And for us, he died as a hero, and his memory will continue to be a memory of a hero that sacrificed himself for the good of humanity, for the medical profession, and he walked my talk. That when push comes to shove, you remember your humanity, and you save people regardless of their identity. He saved Jews until his last breath, when he defined himself as Palestinian Arab Muslim, and for him, his human nature was above his ethnic identity, and so his memory always calls for blessing, and we start with that blessing to his memory. But it's still a difficult memory to have, and it's a difficult wound to heal, because the war is not over. And every additional person that you hear dying reminds us that maybe his life was for vain. We didn't get better with the loss of his life. In January, we got hit by another direction, by the Israeli police that raided our house and arrested my daughter for posting a photo of the destruction in Gaza. And on the photo, she wrote, "Until when?" Basically, it was just some kind of a prayer hoping for this to end. And three of the right-wing Otzma Yehudit party students that study with her at college reported her to the college administration that they think she supports terror organization. They went to the police, and the next day they raided our house with 15 special forces unit, broke apart everything in the house, and they arrested her for 5 days, and the university decided to kick her out. We fought back, and we managed to cancel the procedures, and managed to release her quickly by the decision of the court, because there was no legal foundation. It was part of this police force policy of McCarthyism and silencing and racism. And I must say, with all of the I said against the police, not all of the police commanders and not all of the police officers are there, but many in the Israeli police today are trying to bring Arab sacrifice as an offering to the existing minister of police, who's extremely racist, trying to please him so that they can get some promotions. and they see Arab citizens as an easy target to offer to him. The third hit that we got was 2 weeks ago, with actually second time getting rockets on our town that come from the north, from Hezbollah, and burning some of our olive orchards. And some of the trees are 400-year-old trees that got destroyed, and maybe the physical value is not important, but those were trees that were planted by our great-grandparents 400 years ago, and this really maybe harms you more than the political issues when you see the destruction of tradition and history and legacy just by acts of war. So it's been tough, and at the same time, you need to remember that, ask the question, what do we do? So on October 8th, the question is, what do we do? Knocked on our door without expecting it. 8 Jewish women came to our campus, our Givat Haviva campus, with their children and said, we need a place to stay. They were evacuees from the Gaza surrounding. What do you do? We have the rooms. So you say, take them in. Within 3 days, there were 300 people. And 300 people that came pretty much with nothing, including some Bedouin families from the south, and they stayed with us for 3 months. And our staff, Jewish and Arab staff, had to deal with that, because that's what you need to do at that time. People that knock on your door and they need help, that's what you need to do. But then the day after, you ask yourself, what do you do in the field of Jewish-Arab relations? I guess we'll talk more about that.
You've mentioned, in a sense, it was almost a map of what Arab Palestinians, citizens of Israel, have been experiencing in the last year, because it was an attack from the south from Hamas, attack from the north Hezbollah, an attack from within Israel or on their Israeli citizenship. Can you describe, before we talk about the field of shared society and the initiatives of shared society in the past year, can you talk about some of the experiences of Arab Palestinians, Arab Palestinian citizens of Israel in the past year? I'll share with the room. At some point last year, we did an event with the Menomadin Center from Bar-Ilan University, and we've heard a research that they've done. It wasn't a poll, it was an academic survey. And they showed that and it was quite, it was shortly after October 7th and the war has started. So I'm not talking about recently, but at the beginning. And you saw that among Arab Palestinians, citizens of Israel, there were an incredible increase in wanting to engage, in feeling more Israeli, in feeling more a part of Israel's problems. And from the Jewish population, the Jewish Israeli population, you would see a decrease that stems from suspicion and fear. And some of the things that we've been seeing in the past year, ultranationalism and racism among Israelis are on the increase. Limitation of liberties, one of them you gave an example of free speech. Can you give us the lay of the land as you see it for Arab Palestinian citizens of Israel in the past year?
Well, the story goes much further back. Arab citizens of Israel, as you already referred to that, Masua, the massive majority define themselves as Palestinians. Almost more than 2/3 use the same Palestine in their self-definition. Actually, Professor Hartman does this study every couple of years, asking Arab citizens of Israel, how do you define yourselves? You get 17 different variations. 28% use what we call singular identity. Only Israeli, only Arab, only Palestinian, only Bedouin, only Christian, only Muslim, only Druze. So these are 7 singular identities, but only 28% use a singular identity. The remaining 72% use what we call a hyphenated identity. They integrate one more factor in self-definition. But among 2/3, the term Palestine appears, and among 2/3, the term Israel appears.
So it's 2/3 from the 75?
No, 2/3 in overall.
Overall.
So yeah, include the singular plus. But the term Israel and the term Palestine is shared by about 62%, more or less. In this dual identity appears there. One of them is a process that I call Israelization process. The Arab community is beginning to realize that not only that it has been Israeli, but its future is Israeli. And actually this got strengthened during the Oslo agreements, because the Oslo agreements said that a future Palestinian state, if or when it will be established, hopefully when it's established, will be more or less in the West Bank and Gaza, which means it's not going to come to Ixal, my town. It's not going to come to Nazareth. It's not going to come to Ksaife near Beersheba. Those areas will be forever Israeli, even in an agreement that has been accepted by the PLO, which means that the options for Arab citizens are either to think about moving to live, dislocating to move in a future Palestinian state, or stay home. Now, Professor Sami Smoha and Dr. Nuhad Ali asked this question: would you move to live in a future Palestinian state if or when it will be established? Only 3 to 7% of Arab citizens say yes. The rest say no. Why? Ask them why. They say, we're home. This is our homeland. We don't lack a sense of belonging. My family has been living in the same village for my granddaughter, who's 14 months. She's 29th generation. It's almost 800 years. For us, this is home, this is homeland, this is belonging. The olive trees that were burnt are 400 years. They were planted by our direct linear grandparents. We know who planted them. The trees are named after our grandparents. Each one of the trees carries a name. So the sense of belonging is very, very clear. And the question that offers itself as a result is, okay, if we belong to the land, do we belong to the state? And there's a debate about this. And actually the state is trying to say, no, you don't belong. The proof is the nation-state law that was passed in the 19th of July 2018. And basically Israel says to itself, I'm the state of the Jews, I'm not the state of the Israelis. Saying to me, I'm not your state. Still, I carry the passport, the national ID card, I pay my taxes and so on, but it's a kind of disownment of the state of its Arab citizens, which negates the Declaration of Independence. The deal that my grandfather had with the state of Israel, which actually appears in writing in the Declaration of Independence, stay and be part of the prosperity and development of the state of Israel, based on political and social equality. It appears in writing in the Declaration of Independence. So Israel is being derailed from the promise and the premise in the Declaration of Independence. Israel is being derailed in the way it relates to its Arab citizens. It's been kidnapped and hijacked to become more national, religious, anti-Arab, anti-democratic state. And that shrinks the living space of Arab citizens, at least on the vertical discourse, the political equality. On the social aspect, I think that we are managing to, sustain a lot of Jewish-Arab partnerships and cooperation, despite the last 15 years of right-wing governments that are making every effort to pull us backwards. There is significant effort forward on the social economic issues. I'll give you a couple of examples. Hopefully you don't need it, but if you do come to Israel and you go to a hospital, you'll find that 24% of the doctors in Israel are Arab, 44% of the nurses, and 55% of the pharmacists. There is something good developing there. It's an island that we can refer to as an island of success in the social place. At universities, 21 years ago, the percentage of Arab students in Israeli universities was 3.5%. Today, it's 20% of the student population. It's 23% of the engineering students. 2/3 of our students in Israeli universities are female Arab students. So you begin to see some major progress. One of it, or one side of it, is a capacity building of the Arab community, but the other side is space creation by the Israeli Jewish community. The Israeli Jewish community is creating space, welcoming into the high-tech industry, welcoming into the academia, welcoming into the medical industry, but push out in the political scene that tries to delegitimize the Arab citizenship and make it second-class citizenship. That's what we're dealing with as I would say, two main strategic processes going on.
So it's interesting because a lot of the proponents of the nation-state law, the nation-state law you discussed, you mentioned, a lot of the controversy around it is not necessarily in what it says, but in what it doesn't say. So a lot of the things that the nation-state law says are things that are also found in the Declaration of Independence, but it keeps clear of saying that, it says that Israel is the nation state of the Jewish people, and it doesn't say anything about being a home to all its citizens, for example. It doesn't speak about equality. And as a law that is an identity, basic law, and a normative status of a constitution, that lack of saying is very, very loud. So a lot of it's of the proponents of the law says, but that's fine, because we don't need equality or democratic, equal values in that law, because we have them in other basic laws, in other parts of our constitutions. For example, of our constitution, or Israel doesn't have a constitution, it has a live constitution, which we call basic laws. In another basic law, the basic law human dignity, human dignity and liberty, we don't really have, but the Supreme Court read into it equality. So that's fine. I think that what you're really saying here or giving voice here is that even if the Arab-Palestinian sector had complete equal democratic right, which I think we could all agree that it might be an inspiration, but it's not the status in reality right now, it's not enough, because there's something more in identity. But we had several discussions which we didn't agree on, so I'd like to hear what you have to say.
My undergraduate degree from Hebrew University is in English literature and political science. I think I learned more politics in English literature than in political science. The late Professor Alice Shalvi, that was one of my teachers, she used to say me, she used to hit me on the head and say, Mohammed, when you read the text, read the subtext. What is missing? She called it the power of omission.
Yes.
What did the author choose to omit? What did the authors of the nation-state law choose to omit? The status of Arabic language, which was official language the day before, was dropped from being an official language. So it doesn't appear in the nation-state law. They don't say we're dropping the status of Arabic language, but they say the language of the State of Israel from this moment onwards is only Hebrew, or Hebrew. They don't say anything about Arabic.
Yeah, it has, the Arabic language has an important status, but
special status,
but no one ever says what kind of special status it is.
Yes, usually when we say special people, it's special needs. That's the meaning of it. That's how I even relate to it. It's downgrading with an insult. It's either equal or non-equal. But to call us, even the term special, I don't like that term. The second thing is that, yes, there are direct discriminatory lines that when they speak about Israel sees its duty to encourage and enhance Jewish settlement in the land of Israel. What about Israeli settlement? What about non-Jewish citizens that need settlement? And the term Jewish settlement is a code word that we've already experienced for the last 75 years. It means that you come to the Galilee and you confiscate a piece of land and you develop a town or a kibbutz or a mushav there. You bring very good factories to there. You create jobs for them. You give them very good education. You give them very fast access roads that do not have exits to the Arab towns. The roads are confiscating the lands from the nearby Arab towns without giving them ability to use either the job places, access the job places which is 1 mile away from them, or access the road which was paved on their own lands. It means development towns that get tax cuts in the Galilee, but only for Jews only. It means the creation of regional councils that take over the land, that prevent the possibility of Arab towns to create industrial zones or even housing. Arab citizens are 21% of the population, but have municipal jurisdiction over 3.5% of the land. This is encouraging Jewish settlement for us. I mean, so it looks nice and it looks beautiful, and it's part of the ethos of the creation of a Jewish homeland, but the subliminal messages in it, it's exercise discrimination against Arab citizens. So that's why I cannot coexist with the nation-state law. I know what the founders intended, the people that wrote that law, their intention was racist. Their intention was stealing all of the assets of the state, not just the physical assets, but the sense of belonging. Whose state is it? Israel says, I don't belong to you. If Israel wants to be a proper civic state, it needs to say, I am the state of my citizens. I have no problem with Israel saying I'm the state of the Jewish people. I have no problem with that. But you cannot only be the state of the Jewish people. You also have to be the state of your citizens. Without that, you're ethnically racist. And that law is racist. And it has to be taken out of the Book of Laws in Israel. I think it's a shame. It's a Cain sign in the Book of Laws, one of 28 discriminatory laws. It's not the only law. The citizenship law is similar to that. The Nakba law is similar to that. The acceptance committee's law is similar to that. 28 laws that they do not have a place in a country that aspires to be democratic, aspires to be equal, aspires to have laws such as respect for dignity and liberty and human rights.
So let's talk about politics, because you've discussed the social aspect and really the increase of engagement and participation of the Arab-Palestinian society within the general Israeli society. If Arab-Palestinian Israelis are voting to their full capacity, they have 1/5 of the parliament, which is not something that we've seen a lot in the past decades, if at all. We had only one time during what Israel refers to as the change government, when Naftali Bennett and later on Yair Lapid were prime ministers, where an Arab-Palestinian party, only one of the Arab-Palestinian parties were members mamash of actual members of the government, of the coalition, Mansour Abbas's party. Can you reflect on low percentage of voting? It seems that there's a political participation that is reluctant in trying to really influence Israeli society. It almost feels like, the Haredi, the ultra-Orthodox parties, for a long time their ethos was, we're from the outside, we're not really a part of it. That's why for a long time ultra-Orthodox politicians, when they were a part of the coalition and the government, they said, we don't want to be ministers, we only want to be deputy ministers, so we won't have the whole responsibility or the whole accountability. And there's something of outside, inside, and also just one more element, a lot of tension of causes. What is the cause that Arab-Palestinian politicians are, or what's the main cause that Arab-Palestinian politicians are fighting for, I think that at least in the eyes of the Israeli public, of the Jewish Israeli public, and it might be completely wrong, completely mistaken, but in the eyes of the Jewish Israeli public, the majority of Arab-Palestinian politicians are not struggling for Arab-Palestinian Israelis, but for Palestinians who are, and now we can go to different definitions, right? Outside of Israel, not citizens of Israel, under Israeli occupation, under Israeli control. We can go through the whole list of possibilities to define.
Just to be a bit more correct in the numbers, the Arab citizens of Israel are only 17% of the population. The 21% includes East Jerusalem. They do not have the right to vote.
You're right, yes.
And Arab citizens is a younger population than the rest of the Israeli Jewish population. So the actual percentage of voters is 15.5%. So the maximum potential is not a fifth of the seats in the Knesset. It's a bit less than that. It's about potentially a maximum of 18 seats, 17, 18 seats. Just to be a little bit more accurate, because we're in semi-academic setting into university. There are two things that I think are hidden or I can identify in your question. One is about the turnout rate, and the second about being part of the coalition afterwards. In 1999, I ran the elections campaign for the United Arab List, and at some point they negotiated an agreement with Ehud Barak, who was a candidate, and I was appointed to also run Barak's campaign in the Arab community. And I got him 97% of the Arab voters with a turnout rate of 78%. And 78% turnout rate. Among the Jews, it was about 79%. We were pretty much equal. That was the peak of Arab turnout in the history of Israel. And I'm proud to say I had a major contribution into that process. And when we negotiated with Barak, we said to him, we need the right messages to be able to encourage Arab citizens to vote. Then it was a split vote. You voted for the Prime Minister and you voted to the Knesset. And we said to him, to encourage more Arab citizens to vote, we need you to say a few things. And said, what? And my answer was, say that if elected, one, you will integrate Arab political parties into your coalition. Second, you will continue with the peace process with the Palestinians. Third, you will bring the golden ages, which is the period of the Rabin government and its policy change towards Arab citizens, where they spoke about equal integration of Arab citizens and budget appropriations on equal basis. And fourth, change the definition of the state of Israel from only being the state of the Jews to also being the state of its citizens. He said yes, 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 yes. But the fourth one, he said yes, but. And so he said in his campaign, if elected, we're going to make Israel become Hamdina Shel Kulam, the state of all. And the tagline was, in Hebrew, for the Mizrahi and the Ashkenazi and the Haredi and and the Arabs. In Arabic, it was for Jews and Arabs and everyone else. So in the Arabic campaign, the status of Arab citizens as this Israel becoming their state was second in second place. This was fantastic material as a campaign manager to go and sell it. So, buy the lottery ticket because this is the prize. It was a fantastic prize, and 97% of the Arab voters voted for him. It was a very convincing argument. It tells you that the Arab community is very pragmatic when there is a proper opportunity for it. Since then, many Arab citizens started voting with their feet, walking out of the electoral process. We lost almost a third of the Arab voters for a number of reasons. One, that the Israeli Jewish center-left political parties did not deliver. In 1999, almost one-third of the Arab voters voted for Labor, for Meretz, the center-left political parties. Barak did not deliver, and neither Meretz delivered, and the voters of those parties pulled out, and did not go to vote to the Arab political parties. They saw the Arab political parties as maybe too radical, as maybe non-efficient, maybe not effective, and they basically pulled out and are watching the elections. Those are the more pragmatic Arab citizens that are not voting. It's not the radical voices are actually still involved in the political system, but they pulled out from the Israeli center-left parties, and they never parked anywhere else. They're parked at home, they do not participate. The second process that happened is the effectiveness of Arab political parties. And I hear people saying, well, having one Ahmad Tibi or 10 Ahmad Tibis, that's the name of one of the Arab members of the Knesset, is the same. Their role is to reflect the pain and anger and frustration on the Knesset, and no real results come at the end of the day. So the lack of capacity for them to deliver has also derailed many people or reduced the incentive for people to go to vote. Some of it is the performance of the Arab members of the Knesset themselves by having maybe different priority of what do they represent in the Knesset. So maybe they overrepresent the cross-border Israeli-Palestinian issue and maybe underrepresent the internal social economic issues that people want. If you ask an Arab citizen today, what do you want from your representatives? Prioritize. Number one, personal safety. Very high crime rate, which is almost 4 times or even 7 times the average in the Israeli Jewish society. So people are feeling unsafe in their own homes, mostly as a result of lack of policing, under-policing. The second is education. The third is employment. The fourth is housing. The fifth, I'm not sure what's the fifth, but the sixth is solution for the Israeli-Palestinian cross-border conflict. But then ask them, would you vote to a party that does not call for a solution for the Israeli-Palestinian conflict by creation of a Palestinian state? They will say, we will not vote for such a party. So although it's number 6 in priority, but it's a conditional 6, it's a conditional priority. They say it's not what we want to deal with on daily basis, but we're not giving up our support for end of occupation and independence for the Palestinian people, which is a very practical and pragmatic approach, by the way. The problem is that some of the Arab leaders do not understand it, and they do not know how to weigh it in their performance in the Knesset. I think that the public is much smarter than the political leaders. And
that's across populations, Jewish and the Palestinian.
Yeah, the other thing that I want to add on this, Masua, I think that failing to increase our political presence in Israeli society allows the process of delegitimization, which is exactly what the right wing in Israel wants. They want us to underperform politically, to show up less to the elections. One for a simple practical reason. The less Arab voters, the bloc of the center-left will be weaker. Because the previous government, with Mansour Abbas being part of the coalition, first of all, this is not the first political partnership between Jewish and Arab political parties. The previous one was actually during the Rabin government. Rabin ruled with a 56-seat minority government against a majority of 59, which was the right wing. But he got what was called then the safety net arrangement by the 5 Arab members of the Knesset that gave him the majority, solid majority for 5 years. I'm sorry, for 4 years.
But it is a different level of engagement, of saying we are officially part of this, not only a safety net.
Correct, I agree, but it was more effective, by the way.
Yes.
They were, I remember I was one of the signatories on the agreement, but there was an agreement with Labour Party, 28 items that we agreed upon, and all of them were implemented. Mansour Abbas's mistake, and he's a good friend of mine, and I argue with him, he didn't sign an agreement. It was a handshake. Handshake in politics, gets you good intentions. Go cash it in. We couldn't cash it in. There was an agreement that was presented to the Knesset as part of the coalition agreement. So safety net agreement is part of the coalition agreements. And Rabin, and after he was assassinated, Shimon Peres did fulfill all of the 20 items. One of them was on the cross-border Israeli-Palestinian conflict to continue negotiations for a solution, but the 27 others were social, economic issues. That's when the term corrective discrimination was invented, which is similar to affirmative action, where government policies were kicked in place to create more access to budgets. The term equality started becoming dominant, replacing the term coexistence. Until then, the government wanted coexistence, and now we started focusing on equality. That's why we refer to it as the golden period. The golden ages of Arab citizens, borrowed from Jewish history, of the golden ages of the Jews in Andalusia. The golden ages of Arab citizens, it's those 4 years which were much more influential and effective. The main reason is the Jewish partner that had the willingness to move forward and not just to seek it as an opportunistic situation. I supported and I continue to support the engagement of Mansour Abbas in the previous government with the Bennett Lapid. I think it was of historic magnitude and importance. And it broke certain glass ceilings, dramatic glass ceilings, by becoming officially part of the coalition. By the way, the support for this move in the Arab community before Mansour Abbas did it was around 38%. Today, the support of potentially repeating it is somewhere around 70%. So in the perspective of most Arab citizens, the experiment worked. We wanted more. Among the Jewish citizens before October 6th, the support also rose to above 52% for the first time. This hasn't been checked after October 7th, 23. There's an assumption that this dropped, with an increase of mistrust and increase of mutual fear from both sides. The political scene of the political potential for political partnership today might become much more difficult, but some of the Arab political leaders are, Mansour Abbas are playing, I think, smart politics by making themselves available for the idea, for the concept of political partnership. Among the Jewish community, I had a meeting with Benny Gantz about a month ago. He wouldn't do it. He's afraid of losing what he calls the soft right. And the center left is always trying to run their politics in appeal towards the soft right. They want, because that's the only other pool of voting. Votes can come either from the Arab community or from the soft right. There's nowhere else to bring votes. They prefer to get more legitimacy within the Jewish community than to be in a situation similar to Rabin government, where the left was ruling with the minority government.
There's something interesting about the expectation of maybe a word of introduction here. There's a diversity, a lot of parties in the Israeli parliament. And it's not just right to left, but every single sector has at least one party that represents it. At some point, the Arab parties united to form one party in order for her, the joint list, in order for the party to have more possibility to enter the Knesset and to have higher numbers, which Mansour Abbas at some point withdrew from. There's something peculiar about expecting the Arab-Palestinian population to have just one party across diverse political opinions and social needs. But if you can reflect a bit about how you see, how would you like, if you had a board to draw the future or the near future of the Arab-Palestinian parties and in Israeli politics, what would you like to see?
Well, I was part of the negotiations that created the joint list, and I managed to get out the vote campaign on their behalf when they were together. And I think 2015, and I think that was a fantastic point of capable to engage strategically on issues with the rest of Israeli society. I think that is a show of power and capacity to overcome the shades of gray within the Arab community. The shades of gray with Arab political parties are very much about internal issues within the community. More religious, more socialist, more nationalist. But when it comes to their platform of what do they want to accomplish in the Knesset, it's pretty much the same. And that was actually really the point in which we said, okay, what do you really want in Israeli politics? Why are you sending your people to the Knesset? And you get the same platform, and the difference is what do you say to your constituency. So Mansour Abbas wants more of a traditional religious lifestyle. The Communist Party wants more liberal socialist lifestyle. Balad wants one more nationalistic lifestyle connecting with the Palestinian national ethnic identity. And in my view, these are really very minor perspectives. I think those that go to the Knesset, I think we need to have a joint umbrella of all Arab political parties and be significant force that the center left in Israel can never form a coalition without us. This will be able to allow us to put clear demands of what, as similar to the national religious parties today. They are in a joint list despite their shades of difference. And this allowed them to come to Netanyahu and basically milk him for their needs and their bad intentions. We have good intentions, so at least we can pressure a center-left government for good intentions. But again, this takes me back, Masua, to will they have a Jewish partner to tango with? And when the Arab political parties had that shared capacity, they recommended Benny Gantz to form a government. And all of them sided behind him, and he betrayed them. He went and handed the government and he gave it to Netanyahu. And that's why the question is whom to trust, whom to engage with. Is Lapid going to do it the same way? Is Gantz in his second return now going to respect agreements in the Arab community? So it's not, Arab politics is not exclusive Arab politics. It's Arab politics within Israeli politics. Over the last year, the issue of the crisis, the Israeli-Palestinian crisis since October 7th till today, is bringing up the topic that cross-border Israeli-Palestinian conflict is higher on the table, despite the fact that Arab citizens are saying our Israeli identity has increased. We object what Hamas did, but you also hear people saying we also object what Israel is doing since October 8th. And it means that the topic is on the table, and parties that will avoid putting the Israeli-Palestinian conflict on the table will not get traction. So I think that even if you come with very conciliatory approach to say we want to influence Israeli politics and we want to have gains for our social economic reality in Israel, without bringing the Palestinian issue also on the topic and finding an Israeli Jewish partner to tango with you, that's not going to increase the turnout rate in the Arab community.
So can you share with us how, what needs to happen in order to change some of the themes and some of the trends that you were talking about? What are the initiatives that you lead, that you know of in the field of shared society, both to influence Arab Palestinians, but also to influence the Jewish partner that is absent right now?
I was hoping for this question. I chose that professionally. I'm an educator, and but as a responsible citizen, once there are elections, I take time off, and I become a political animal. I invite you to be political animals the next remaining 4 days in America. I think this is a good way to try to influence your reality. Usually change happens top down, and that's on the day of elections, and the leading days to the day of elections. But the rest of the time, I prefer the bottom-up approach and trying to create activities and initiatives that change reality. So if elections happen once every 4 years, my time is usually divided 3 years and 9 months as an educator and 3 months as a political activist. Unfortunately, we get more elections that we need in the country. So this political procedure is knocking on my door too often. But in normal times, I spend my time on the horizontal and not the vertical discourse, not the political issues. For that, politicians are supposed to deal with. I try to give them the best capacity possible by getting as many more votes possible. But the day after, I go to social initiatives that try to create two processes. One, capacity building of the Palestinian Arab citizens in Israel. How do we build capacity to succeed as a minority in the state of Israel? Education is number one, to increase the percentage of Arab students in Israeli universities, to drop obstacles in front of Arab students to enter universities, to increase the percentage of Arab women in the labor market. And this comes with two approaches. One is building the will and capacity within the Arab community, but second, to create the space within the Jewish community. And in fact, there have been some fascinating successes. I shared with you one of those islands of success, the medical industry, but it's also in the academia. And it doesn't come naturally. You know, when we wanted to, in 2003, the percentage of Arab students, as I said earlier, was 3.5% of the student population. Today, it's 20%. To do that, we needed to change the testing mechanism of students so that the universities decide who qualifies to enter university and who doesn't qualify. In the US, you have the SATs. In Israel, we have an exam called the psychometric exam. But until then, the psychometric exam was offered in Hebrew only, not in Arabic. So if an Arab student that studies in an Arab school approaches the exam, they need to answer the questions in their second language. And we empirically were able to prove that that's a reason to lose 23% of your grade. If you offer the exam in the mother language, in Arabic, the score increases by 23%. That qualifies 23% more students to enter universities. Bingo, we succeeded with that. We convinced the Board of Higher Education that this is the way to test the intellectual capacity of a person to be an academic creature, a student. And if you're concerned about their Hebrew level, do another test of Hebrew. And if their Hebrew is not good enough, offer them a pre-academic course in Hebrew or 4 extra hours a week in the first semester. If they don't pass it, they don't move to the second semester. But separate the problems that you have here. Another thing that we found, another obstacle was the accumulated grade average. Arab students were scoring much, much less than Jewish students. And we found a bug. What was the bug? Exams that fall during the month of Ramadan when you're fasting. If you take an exam after 1 p.m. and you're fasting, believe me, you're going to lose more than 20% of your grade. Your sugar level, your blood level, that's why we tell our kids, take chocolate on your exam, have something sweet, liquid level in your system helps you perform better. Your intellectual output improves if your sugar level is balanced, if your liquid balance is in place. And now all universities offer Arab students that are fasting either an exam in the morning and not in the afternoon, or a deferred date. This is creating the welcoming ecosystem that respects the uniqueness of the Arab students in universities and allows them to perform at an equal opportunity to that of their Jewish counterparts. Offering scholarships, offering university housing. Those kind of fixes allow a fantastic increase. Among Arab women, for example, employment rate of Arab women in 2007, just 16, 17 years ago, only 17% of Arab women worked. And with the intervention that we had, now we are at 46% of Arab women working. That's almost 30% of the Arab women entered the labor market. Again, how do you do that? Some of it is soft skills, to prepare them how to go for an interview, prepare their Hebrew skills, because the Arab community, 21% of the population, but creates 11% of the jobs because of the lower economic reality. Where should you then look for a job? In the Jewish sphere. What do you need for that? Good Hebrew. What else do you need? Daycare. What else do you need? Public transportation to Jewish towns, not just between Arab towns and Arab towns. What else do you need? You need to train the employer on how to handle an employee from the Arab community. Someone that does not need a lunch break during the month of Ramadan, because they're fasting. They need their lunch break at the end of the day to go 1 hour earlier. Someone that does not need 7 days of mourning when you sit Sheva. The law gives you 7 days to mourn. We're commanded in our culture to go back to work on the 4th day. So we lose 4 days. But we need to mourn also second cousin and not just first cousin. The law only recognizes immediate family member, but our culture says you need to also sit 3 days for second family relative relationship. How would the employer take those things into consideration? I mean, this is closer to diversity issues in the workplace that are not based on Jewish-Arab relations, but to create an ecosystem that is welcoming to students, and to employees, that if an Arab student goes to university, they have a place to pray. They have a place to do wudu, to wash themselves, that in a bathroom that is equipped to offer those kind of situations. So we're busy in creating those islands of success. One of the most successful projects, you see some of it in the brochure, is we offer encounters for Jewish and Arab youth. Last year we worked with almost 18,000 kids, 17,774 to be exact. That's almost 70%.
After October 7th?
After October 7th. And that's almost 70% of the volume of encounters between Jewish and Arab youth. I mean, we operate almost 70% of this industry, let's call it that way. I think though that the work needs to be done with 400,000 kids and not just 17,000 kids. And unfortunately, we don't have the government supporting that, although there was a state comptroller report demanding that this needs to be expanding. Today we're touching less than 0.5% of the student population, when this should touch at least 50% to be able to have tectonic shift and real impact. But we opted to another arena, which is training teachers, and starting to we created a project I started personally in 2005. We called it Cross-Sector Teachers Program. You know, in America, the US government enforced the busing in the 60s. In Israel, we don't have a government that is willing to do that. We have never had a government willing to do that. So some private initiatives started. We created the school at Givat, Haviva, called United School. There's the hand-in-hand schools with 6 schools and a couple of other initiatives like that. We have 9 mixed schools in Israel. That's the bottom-up effort. But it's 9 schools created over the last 27 years. That's 1 school every 3 years, 9 out of 5,000 schools. To finish the job, we need, do the math, 15,000 years. That's not social change. You need something faster. So the faster route I thought about was the cross, if we can't bus children, let's start busing teachers. Jewish teachers in Arab schools, Arab teachers in Jewish schools. I started with 6 teachers in 2005. Today we have 2,500 cross-sector teachers, covering almost 20% of the Israeli Jewish educational system and 20% of the Arab educational system. 93% of the kids, this is their first time ever engaging with the other and having a meaningful encounter with the other, not a superficial, instrumental encounter. Someone that pours you coffee or someone that sells you a ticket. That's instrumental, technical, superficial encounter. But a meaningful encounter where all the theories of conflict resolution kick in. The social contact theory that is supposed to give you humanization of the other and break down stereotypes. The narrative identity debate theory, where you allow the elephant in the room, you talk about the problems, you talk about the conflictual issues. It's not just about being nice to each other, but it's also about being honest and talk the hard issues, even if we have to agree to disagree. And the third component is what's called the superordinate goal theory in conflict resolution, which is mutual interests. Let's look and identify mutual interests and create more and more interdependency between the two communities. It's happening in the medical industry. We want to do it in other arenas. One of the latest projects we started 2 years ago, trying to imitate the success in the medical industry, is in the art industry. So we take 6 Jewish and 6 Arab fresh graduates from art school. They come to Givat Haviva campus. They spent 4 months in a residency program, working in the same space, living in the same dormitories, doing a joint production and a joint exhibition. The first portfolio ever is co-created. And we hope within the next 10 to 15 years, we will have 400 or 500 artists go through this, so that the next generation of artists would have gone through a deep cooperation between Jewish and Arab artists, and this way we can affect the culture of the art industry.
So the brochure that Mohammad spoke about is right in the entrance of the room, just so you'd know on your way out. I'm going to pause this. I'm going to save myself the right for the last question, but I'm going to pause our conversation for some questions from our participants here. Rebecca, you're going to
I'm gonna
keep the queue, right? Thank you.
I see Ethan and then I'll with you. And I'll take a cue, so if you raise your hand, I'll do that to capture.
Thank you so much. This has been fascinating and really happy that you're here. I think I probably speak for a number of people in the room in finding the clear sort of disconnect between the experiences you describe and what we hear by far the most about with respect to Jewish-Arab relations in Israel and Palestine today, which is, of course, the war and the situation in Gaza and also in the West Bank. And so I guess I'm just wondering if you, I mean, it seems to me that with the greatest respect and acclaim for your work, you have to navigate a tension and a certain kind of distance from that world in order to be successful in your work in Israeli society. I'm sort of guessing and intuiting. And so I'm just wondering if you can say a little bit more about to what degree the war has had really an impact on your work, and to what degree you felt like you had to compartmentalize, as we say, this sort of very fancy English term, put something in a box away from our center. The events in Gaza, no matter how much they might assume affect your heart.
Do you want to, Rebecca, do you want to take more than one and then, or how do you want to?
I can if you can capture them.
What do you think?
I see a lot of hands. I've got about 5 people so far.
So maybe I'll give quick answers for that. I mean, there's no way to do real disconnect. Study that we did and we presented it on the 9th of January, we had President Herzog in our conference. It showed that the mistrust between Jewish and Arab citizens has more than doubled. It was somewhere around 40%. Today, more than 81% of Israeli Jews do not trust Arab citizens. 81%. Among Arab citizens, it was about 30%. Now it's about 60%. And mutual fear is also around the same numbers. So the impact of the cross-border conflict more than doubles our problem. And you cannot avoid it. We are not the organization, and I'm not the person that's going to bring you the capital peace, the capital P peace. We're not going to do this. We barely create what I call pieces of peace. It's like pieces of a puzzle of peace. And yes, I admit, we're very, I think on the scale of 1 to 100, we're probably solving 1% of the conflict. But I think it's a critical 1%. And the reason I say it's critical 1%, because Israel is the lab for Jewish-Arab relations. If we're able to prove that Jews and Arabs can live together, I think this will be the best export to the rest of the Middle East. If we fail, then why should someone that lives in Syria or someone that lives in Lebanon or Jordan or Gaza ever believe that peace is possible, that Jews and Arabs can live together, that equality can be created, that partnership can be created? And that's why I think we even to enhance and speed the process inside Israel, not just for the sake of the Arab citizens, but also for the sake of the Jewish citizens, out of strategic interest for the state of Israel towards the outside. Still, I would say that although there's cross impact and radiation of good or bad energies, the day after is very different. Everyone now talks about the day after. I met with President Biden and also with his team a couple of times in the last month, and they are all talking about the day after. And the day after, when the cross-border Israeli-Palestinian conflict, I really hope that it will end with the creation of a Palestinian state before even a peace process. I think that the problem of the Oslo agreement, it was more focused on the process and not the end result. I think the end result has to be put on place to say, here are the borders of the future Palestinian state. Who's on board? Who are the Palestinians? The Palestinian leadership is on board. Strengthen them and bring them on board. Who are the Israeli leaders that are willing to engage in that? Strengthen them and bring them on board. And whoever wants to be a disruptor or spoiler, put him in their place. But we cannot, I can't do much except talk to people in the administration here and people in the UN and people there. And, we can just talk, maybe give some advice, some perspective. On the day after in Jewish-Arab relations is not a divorce agreement. It's not splitting the house. It's actually more of marriage agreement. How do we engage Jewish and Arab citizens in a successful relationship? And what we're doing today is we're accumulating damage. The conflict is bringing us damage. We are losing ground every single day. And I'll give you an example. The cross-border, the cross-sector teachers program, under the previous Israeli government, we were able within 1 year to jump from 1,500 teachers to 2,500 teachers. We know the project, we have the mechanism, and we needed the political sphere to make it possible, and we doubled almost in 1 year. Under the current government, we're in freeze. And we're actually fighting to maintain it at freeze level. We're not growing. We lost 6 teachers that got fed up with this or with the atmosphere, but it's only 6 when we were afraid of losing half of the 2,500. And I do think that they are the true heroes that are still hanging in there and fighting the battle of the good battle and not the negative battle. But when you think about the day after, it forces you to do 2 things. And if the day after is we're going to live together, I don't want that tsunami to wash everything and then build from scratch. As we accumulate damage, I want to accumulate the least amount of damage. I want to make sure that we are not into burnt territory completely. And that's why intervene today so that businesses do not lose their Arab employees. We're active in 70 companies in how do we facilitate and manage and de-escalate tension between Jews and Arabs. If you leave it to the dynamics of Ben Gvir and Smotrich and radical Palestinian groups, they want another front evolving. They want street fights between Jews and Arabs in Lod, Ramle, in Haifa, as it happened in May 21. And unless you do damage control today, unless you intervene today, we will see bloodbaths between Jews and Arabs in Israel, which will make the day after blurred on the green line. The green line will be blurred completely, and I think will keep us further away from any potential solution. We will lose more and more Israelis that will go in complete disbelief that any Jewish-Arab cooperation can happen, whether it's in Israel or across the border, it will feed the theory that the right wing is saying that the Arab citizens are an extension of the enemy and they will act as fifth column if the opportunity allows that. And this means that the next elections, Ben-Gvir will be the prime minister. So you need to act today in these arenas to try to prevent a complete collapse of the situation.
I would just ask so that we can have as many questions
Short
as
answers.
possible. No, it wasn't toward you, my comment, just succinct questions, if possible, because I have several.
I'm gonna try. My name is Manar Azreik. I am Palestinian Israeli Christian, born and raised in Beersheba. So, أول إشي, first of all, I'm translating from Arabic. يعطيك العافية means blessings on your journey and everything you offer. In Hebrew we say Yeshar Koach. I'm sure many of you would know that. So growing up in Beersheba among immigrants, Jews who came from the Arab world, I was always curious about how are we going to solve the Palestinian-Israeli issue. And my question is, how are you going to use the mental occupation, which is not having equal language as the law requires, to have, like here you have Spanish and English. But, and how would you solve the gap between the Palestinians, Israeli, like myself, like yourself, and like the Palestinians from the Palestinian nation, like your wife, as far as what I heard you say. So there is that mental occupation, not just the physical and the brutality of what the government is doing to the people, the violence and all that, but it's kind of like how you're going to strengthen people on both sides of the border, Palestinians, Arab Israelis, and Palestinians, to find that strength to come and make peace.
Not easy. I think that what the last 13 months have done is pretty much scratch all of us. We all need mental treatment. I think that the first thing that we need is hope. And there's so many people that grow up now without hope. Yesterday I was, Michal, our CEO, was on the Zoom with we had dinner at the house of Jonathan, the interim director of Givat Haviva, and she said something. She said, teenagers today in Israel, 15-year-old kids, Jewish and Arab, in the last 5 years, their teenage life, they've experienced COVID, they've experienced May 21 clashes, and now the war. We're not normal human beings. You're not supposed to have this many challenges in your life within a 4-year period. That's not natural, that's not typical. And I believe that the best solution is hope. I have 4 kids, and my parenting to them is plant hope in their hearts. Plant hard work also. You can't just pray and expect things to happen to you. You need to work hard in order to make this happen. I think when the way to look at things is to look at the half full and the half empty. If we focus only on the half empty, you'll be frustrated, despaired, and some would even say, and I see it among a lot of Arab Palestinian citizens, they're leaving. They're leaving. You're one of them. But now it's happening very fast. Now we're seeing a lot of the very capable doctors moving to Dubai, business leaders moving to Istanbul, Christian community moving to France. They're just simply giving up, and because they're losing hope and capacity. When my son was saying to me a few months ago, he said, "Dad, we have no future in this country." He said to me, "We have no future in this country." I said, "No, you have a future. You need to make it. You need to create it. It's not going to happen to you. Fight positively until the last moment. He works with Israeli Jewish colleagues. He works in a company and most of his employees are Jewish. He's responsible for about 150 people. Start there. Start in your relationship with your Jewish employees. He said to me a few days later that one of the employees didn't know that he was Arab, that when he engaged with him in a discussion, finally this guy after a few months realized that his boss is an Arab boss. Which I told him, that's good. That means that you're not forcing the ethnic identity as a professional issue for you. But actually, it's good to let him know that you can create professional cooperation and partnership despite the different ethnic and political national identities. But I think that I believe that mental health starts with cooperation and partnership with people. I cannot do this work without also finding Israeli Jewish colleagues. And I think that their presence with me as partners is my mechanism to stay on track with them, because I feel that I'm not in a void and that they are in it also for their interests. I don't want them to come in on board to feel pity for the Arab citizens, but to feel that they have something to gain out of this relationship. Jews are the majority in Israel, but the minority in the Middle East. We are the minority in Israel, but the majority in the Middle East. And I think that there's a lot of interdependence that can be created by these two realities that we live in.
Thank you for the work that you're doing. Question: what would you say to a Jewish Israeli person who tells you Israel is a Jewish democratic state?
I wish. That was the promise in the Declaration of Independence. And the only thing that they failed to fulfill is democracy towards the Arabs. One of the Arab members of the Knesset, past members of the Knesset, Abdulaziz Zoabi, he worked for Givat Haviva for some time. He used to say Israel is Jewish and democratic. Jewish towards the Arabs, democratic towards the Jews. Okay? Now, I want Israel to be Jewish and democratic to both sides. Israel, the nation state law says to me, I am towards you, I am Jewish. Basically, you are second-class citizen. You don't belong. That's the problem with that separation. I wrote a long article, and you probably might have seen it, about can Israel be both a nation state of the Jewish people and the state of its citizens. I don't see, by the way, most people have been talking that it's in either or. You can be either the state of your citizens or the state of the nation state. I spent a whole year examining other nation states. I spent a year with the Robert Bosch Academy in Germany, looking at 23 separate cases of nation states that have national minorities. And guess what? It works. You can create the status of a national minority in a nation state that does not challenge the national identity of the state, but protects the national identity of the other minorities that live in, especially national minorities that are indigenous populations. So someone has invented the wheel. Actually, there are 23 separate wheels, 23 separate arrangements. There's no one size fits all. I'm not saying pick one of them from the Europe and copy paste it. Definitely not the US model of minority rights for Native Americans. Sometimes those arrangements are some kind of cages that prevent people from proper integration. Some of those cages are golden cages in some European cases. Sometimes they're rotten cages, as in some of the reserves in America. So we need to create our own wheel. But to learn from others the way they did it. I don't see that Israel being the nation state of the Jewish people as hopefully Palestinian state will be the nation state of the Palestinian people, as something negating its civic identity as also being the state of its citizens. That's a maturity that Israel has to go through, and guess what? I'm not the first one to say it. It's in the Declaration of Independence. I agree that Palestinian leadership has never failed to miss an opportunity. The partition plan of 1947 onwards. And I think that the main problem is lack of proper understanding of Israeli politics. I think that if Hamas leaders have understood Israeli politics, they would not have waged October 7th. What they did, they offered Netanyahu an opportunity to regain power and dismiss all of the movement against him that was the year before, and it's a corrupt leader that should sink in jail, and now allowing him to go back as a national hero that is redefining the future of the Jewish people, coming back with as Superman. So I'm very frustrated there, and I'm not expecting an emergence of an alternative leadership, as I said earlier in an answer, unless there is something on the table. There needs to be something on the table, and that connects to the question also about the US elections and the activism that the young lady there asked. I think that many people are looking for the results of the US elections, not just who gets elected. I mean, one of the sides of if they get elected, we know what he's going to say. We know what he's going to do. He's going to be an elephant in a room that will be unexpected. So when he was elected, he moved the embassy to Jerusalem. He annexed the Golan Heights. He presented the deal of the century, which allows Israel to annex a third of the West Bank. Actions that would shrink the potential for peace in the Middle East. And I have no reason to think that he will do something otherwise. He will give the extreme right wing in Israel whatever they want to please his base of political support in the US. And the other aspect of it, and also relating to your question, is that it's really hard to understand why the US is actually allowing itself not to be a fair broker. Realizing that at the end of the day, the only power that can create a change on the ground is the US government. But it allows itself to lose its fairness into the process, at least in the eyes of most Palestinians. Arab citizens, yes, can be a political force, but that needs to come through, first of all, capacity building. So we spoke, one of the things, as I said, I engage in capacity building, not just social economic programs, but also political power. But political power, we need to mature as a political power. We need to go back to this unity joint list. We need to increase the turnout rate. If it's 60% among the Jewish population, we need to double that. We need to be 130%. I don't know how you make it. Definitely not to do something illegal, but at least that every living person, in my view, that has the right to vote needs to go to vote. This capacity gives you the ability to even force perspectives. If we will have 18 members in the Knesset that will say there will be no center-left government ever without engaging in peace process, this is a force, as it was with the case of the Rabin period. And he continued moving forward. They called it the pulses. And he delivered. Rabin delivered, because he knew if he doesn't deliver, he will not have a government the next day. He tried to build a settlement in what's called Hartman at the time. And when the Arab political parties said, here's a vote of no confidence. And I wrote it myself. I handed it to the Knesset. I was working in the Knesset at the time for one of the Arab political parties, and we handed it to the Secretariat. And the vote was supposed to happen at 4 p.m. Arafat himself calls Arab members of the Knesset and says, don't do it, don't bring this government down. And the answer was, we know Israeli government better than you do. They're going to drop this settlement. And they did. The President Mubarak called at the time to convince the Arab members of the Knesset to drop this. And they told him, you stay out. We know how to handle our politics inside Israel. We know how to twist the arm of Rabin to be capable to move forward in the peace process and not to create actions or to do actions that will prevent us from being able to go forward with the peace process. So there is capacity beyond the capacity of the Arab world. I think Arab countries do not understand Israel well enough, not even Bahrain and not the Emirates. I think they can use a great deal of consultation from many people within the Arab community. They will find us partners. I think we are the community that has the biggest vested interest in trying to find the solution for the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Back to the late member of the Knesset, Abdulaziz Zorbi, one of the things he said, our tragedy is that our country is at war with our people. And I think our opportunity is at peace between our country and our people. That's when we will thrive. We will thrive when we're able to be the bridge for peace between our country and our people. Thank you
So
very
maybe
much.
let us finish with this, because I think that this was probably the most pragmatic, yes, yet hopeful conversation that I have heard for so long. And I would urge all of us to take into heart what you said, that you educate your children to plant both hope and hard work in our hearts. And please, everyone join me in thank you, Muhammad, for this conversation, for this opportunity.